Welcome to our Star Trek Picard after show. As always, I am Christian Bladt. Today, joined by two of my favorite co-hosts. First up, El Sassy Pants herself, Katie Hampton.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So excited to be able to talk about the show with you. And coming back with us again this season, Angelica Trae.
Woo!
We talked after the first episode, and
Yeah, we did.
this is so there's a lot to catch up on. Now, the last time that I saw you though was not that long ago. It was
No.
really just like a week ago. You and I were lucky enough to have been invited to a little Star Trek trivia night over at the Scum and Villainy Cantina, and there were drinks, there were laminates. Angelica
There were
brought a
amazing
tribble.
outfits.
Yeah, that's true. I know. That's oh, I'm wearing the same shirt, conveniently enough.
Nice.
Nice.
What was the
but,
drink? Did it have a fun name?
It did. One was mine was something Ponfar, but now I forget what the full title was. Do you remember any of the fun drinks that you had, Angelica?
One of them was based around Ponfar, and then
Yeah.
another one was based around it was like kind of like physics jargon, like it was like quantum singularity or something
Yep.
like that.
You know what? You're right. There was a quantum singularity.
That's
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
I was just checking the laminate with hopes that it had the drinks listed on there. It did not.
No.
But obviously we should both thank the delightful Stephanie, excuse me, Stephanie from BH Impact, I guess BHI, which is part of 42 West. She was very nice, and this is the main reason to show off though, is that it was for the release of Strange New Worlds on Blu-ray, and they did give us one. And I have to say that was very exciting to be able to leave with that. There was a lot of buzz about like, do we think we're gonna get one? And it's like I hope.
They gave us a comic too.
Yeah, we also got a Strange New World comic, which
This is so cool. I'm geeking out so hard right now.
have right here.
Ooh.
Yeah,
So cool.
It was very cool, and Angelica and I actually switched some of the merch that we got. You'll see a photo of me wearing a hat.
I stole his hat.
Angelica got that hat, but what did I get? I got these great Star Trek socks.
You did.
I think everybody was pretty happy about it, but it was a really fun event, right, Angelica? Just getting to talk Star Trek with people, making new friends.
It was so much fun, and getting to see all the cosplays was really cool because there's just so many eras and costumes involved with Star Trek that you got to see such a wide variety, and it was really cool to see people's like take on it, and maybe a reflection of their favorite series or favorite characters, and surprising lack of we didn't have any Ferengi or any Klingon. I'm still waiting to see more of the prosthetics-based cosplays, but there were some amazing Starfleet crew there, and I had to do the trade because I don't have enough Star Trek hats, but I legitimately have at least maybe 10 pairs of Star Trek socks right now.
Well,
So
I have four now. So that's the important thing.
I love that they're like Starfleet inspired.
Yeah.
And Katie, let me know what you think about this. My thinking, looking around as Angelica's talking, it reminded me, looking around at the different cosplay, I felt like the least practical but showiest is like the Star Trek 2 through 6 era, like the red uniform with the flap, but it has also like almost like the turtleneck. And I was just like, man, I feel like that gets hot. That top like little like ring is white. I don't know how you launder that thing. And
I call it the ramekin collar because it looks like a ramekin. Yeah, it looks like those little cooking ramekins that you put souffles in.
And I'm also like, if I'm gonna wear that, I want to have the flap down and I want to have fake blood on it, so it looks like I came directly from a fight, But
authentic.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know about you, Katie, but I would not be wearing the Star Trek 2 era uniforms there.
Fair
But
enough. Fair enough.
and in the chat, as always, Dominicus Saxon, isn't all drinking based around pound far? I think that we can all start our own pound fars based on the beverages. In any case, so thanks again to everyone at Paramount Plus. And of course, as I said, really Stephanie for reaching out to us and making sure that we were taken care of. It was a delightful evening, and hopefully they have something else coming again soon.
I gotta
And
say,
go ahead, Katie.
their team does a really great job of doing those like events. All of the stuff when we were at Comic-Con, they had a really cool like ice cream truck, and they always just put in so much love and so much geekery into that stuff that I love.
I missed the ice cream truck. What did they have?
Oh my gosh.
Great question.
Oh, they had like the best like Wrath of Pecan ice cream, and
great.
they were looking for like more ice cream. It was really cool. Like they had a whole skin on the truck. It was really cool.
Pecan.
Yeah.
I saw I went to like 10-4. They had that pop-up bar at Comic-Con, but I didn't see the ice cream truck.
Yeah,
I had to wait for a while, but I got in line because I was dressed like Data, and I was like very much in character and everything too. So they're like, go to the front, go to the front.
Oh, nice.
I love that.
They're like, we need Star Trek cosplay in here.
Yeah, for the photos.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, for season 2 of Picard, they did like a pop up of like Guinan's bar from season 2, like that 10 forward. And I did not get in on that. And and people were posting pictures and having fun, but we got to have the fun this time. And Katie, we'll have to get you invited for next time. That's really the key. Because then you could also come home with a comic book. But
yes.
In any case, one of the things that we talked a lot about that night, Angelica, was we're talking about 2 episodes tonight to this afternoon, however, wherever you are in the timeline. We're talking about episodes 6 and 7 of season 3 of Star Trek Picard. And boy, I hadn't seen episode 6 yet. And do you remember what you told me about your viewing experience, Angelica?
I don't have
that you cried.
I'm trying to remember. Also, I don't know why, but my microphone. Sorry if my volume is shifting around. My mic's being funny.
You sound fine.
Okay.
You actually showed me a picture of you watching the episode. And,
I cried. Yeah. I was like crying because, we got like the crew coming back together, and they had flashbacks in there, and I can't help it. Like TNG or The Next Generation was my introduction into Star Trek. So it's like very much rooted into nostalgia. It's where I like fell in love with Star Trek. And so they had some flashbacks in there, and I was just like, I'm crying. Like my face is just leaking right now. And I took pictures of myself crying because like, because I was almost going to. Was it what?
Was it the whistling?
Yeah, Pop Goes the Weasel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with Data, because I love Data. Like Data's the character. I think like Star Trek didn't run in my family or any. You know what I mean? Like I didn't get introduced to it through a familiar. Like I sort of was like channel surfing, and I happened across Star Trek, and it was like a Data heavy episode. And I remember going like, this is a really smart series. I want to watch more. And that was like my entryway. So it was just hitting every single point of like, this is what I love. This is what caused me to fall in love with Star Trek. And so they have those flashbacks, and I'm like, oh, I'm like a kid again, just falling in love with this series and with this franchise. And so it was very special for me.
Yeah, and I think that it's easy to be critical of fan service, but at the same time, sometimes fans love to have their needs and wants serviced. And episode 6 did this in an entirely unnecessary scene, but it's one of my favorite things I've seen in a long time, which is they're looking out, and we're seeing all these ships from the classic series, plural. And we get some of the themes from each of those shows, and it's like, oh, this isn't advancing the story. I mean, it kind of does when they finally get when they get to the bounty, I guess. But it's just like, oh man, they just want to do a whole episode where they like look at ships and we listen to music. I'm gonna be okay with that. How did you feel, Katie?
I was geeking out so hard because I know that there's like a lot of Deep Space Nine references in this season, especially, and I feel like I'm doing more homework on that side. But like the TNG stuff was, it struck the same chords, Angelica. It was like it felt like, oh, my team is back together. Like, we've got Beverly, we've got Geordi, we've got so many people coming together all at once. And then when Worf, it was just like everybody. It was everything that I wanted, minus O'Brien, because O'Brien should definitely come back somehow. But there was just so many things that it just like, oh, it just warmed my heart. And to see Data, even though we've killed him how many times now, and
too many,
too many times,
and we can expect one more. At some point. Yeah.
Hey, we don't talk like that in here.
I'm just saying, it's naturally the story.
No
I
more.
will say I saw a deep fake. If they had like done a deep fake of Data as his like original like look and in some of his scenes, and that made my heart flutter way more. I was like, oh my god, if they did that, that would be insane. But all that to say, Brent Spiner has been amazing and continues to be amazing in this series. And this episode 6, especially, like, there's, oh my gosh, he went off the rails. It was so good.
Yeah. Before we dive into the plot recap, basically, for episode 6, what about the scene we're talking about, Angelica, getting to see the ships and them taking the time to give us the themes from those shows? And no one can tell me that scene shouldn't have been there, because
I mean, it's setting up what Geordi ended up like his kind of like story during all of this, because we haven't really seen him. And I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of like a cool way to picture, oh, like this is what Geordi's been up to. He's been like, protecting all of these like ships, and that was really cool. But also some of the most iconic parts of Star Trek have been based around the music and the ships. I know how much like the ship designers over the years have like put so much love and care into these ships. I've seen so many models online, like all of the folks that put in so much work towards these designs, and it's so meaningful in the greater scheme of like Starfleet. And so not only do we pay homage to that, but we also get all of the just classic sounds along with it, the music, the scoring that has inspired so many people. I can't tell you how many times I've danced to the TNG theme, like it's like the music is a massive part of Star Trek, and the ships are as well. And so that was just like the ultimate paying homage. It's not even like fan service.
It's not just episode 6. They also do that in episode 7, when jumping ahead of all the things that we're going to be talking about here today, but when she's talking to Tuvok, and like the theme of Deep Space Nine comes in, and like there's so many moments that they like agreed. Like it's I don't say it's fan service so much as it's just like, we know what you love, and here it is, full force, which has been so great.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that was the point I was trying to make, is that fan service isn't necessarily bad. You know what I mean? It's like when people throw the term around, they're usually trying to be derogatory with it. And sometimes it really suits the story, and there's time for it. For what Angelica referenced, in terms of production, I wanted to give a quick shout out to my friend Tom Kelly, who's been on the show a number of times, and as people know, is not enjoying this season. He's the one. But his podcast, the Tom Kelly Show, he spoke with Dave Blass, who's a production designer for Star Trek Picard, and he hired Dave did. He's the production designer. He hired a lot of people who he calls really legacy designers who had worked on previous shows to make sure they got a lot of things right. And Dave Blass is a tremendous sport in this interview with Tom, because they basically began interacting when Tom was talking about the reasons he didn't like the show. And, Dave isn't hostile towards him. He just is like, well, why don't you explain to me why you don't like it? So if you're a fan of our show and you enjoy when Tom is on with sort of his contrarian view, please check out his podcast, this episode. I promise everyone, even if you don't agree with Tom's anti-Picard stance, Dave is a tremendous interview. And yes, I'm going to ask him to be on the show as well. From across the pond, where it is almost midnight, Craig Robinson. Craig, thank you for staying up late with us. It's always great to have you. And I had to ask Siri just what time it was going to be when I posted the link. And I'm like, wait, it's before midnight. So we appreciate you being here with us. So yeah, look, those little touches I think are great in this season. Anybody who followed this show, the after show that I did last season, people know that I was not happy with that season, but we're really getting good storytelling. And then on top of that, we're getting these things. Sometimes it's just to kind of distract you. It's like, yeah, but look at all this stuff. Who cares if the story's not good? That's also known as the from a different fandom. That's the Force Awakens approach. Isn't it just cool to see everything again?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and I'm very happy with what we're getting. So let's talk about some of the specifics. It'll be hard to not immediately jump into some of the things that we know from episode 7. But to Angelica's point, this episode, Geordi came back, and while we had Worf in earlier episodes, this was the first time that we got to see him with Jean-Luc. We got to see, so Worf and Raffi basically come back into the fold. And half of that is good, but it's just so exciting to see everyone together. I mean, I know by the end of the episode, we get to see at least an approximation of Data, but I don't know. I feel like if you were to see this and you weren't, and your heart didn't grow 3 sizes that day, well, 1, you must be Tom Kelly. 2, I don't know. There's who hurt you is really the question. If you can't feel excited to have the whole gang back together, and I think that it's not unlike Geordi to not immediately be like, what do I do to break the rules for you? You know what I mean? I thought that the characterization of Geordi in this episode, in episode 6, it made sense. What did you think, Katie, about the way Geordi's kind of like, I can't help you?
Right. It was definitely, it took me back a bit, because it kind of went along with the whole, like, Picard was such a renegade, and I was like, really, Picard? Like, come on, he wasn't like that bad. Like, I mean, I guess we could say that about Riker, but even still, but understanding that, like, he has kids now, and he has 2 kids, and also one of them that is at his helm, or surreptitiously at his helm, like, and he wants to protect, like, that's like a side of Geordi that, like, makes sense to me, that he's kind of grown older, a little bit wiser, and a little bit more careful, and doesn't want to go on these sort of, like, save the entire universe missions anymore, and wants to, like, play it safe. Also, can we just say that he is looking great? Like, everybody has, like, really kept up in their health. It seems like everybody is fit. And those eyes, like, I know in the final episode of TNG, like, we saw that he has, like, the contact eyes instead of the visor. But whatever they did to design it, I can't stop staring at Geordi LaForge's eyes. Like, they are really pop. I love the production design on that, and kind of want to get those little eyepieces too.
Yeah, it's like they're just like this, like, bright, unnatural blue, which is for a guy who spent that many years with basically like a headband over his face. I'm sure that he's like, yeah, this is great.
Do you think he chose that color?
I hope so.
I would hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you think? Are you asking if Geordi chose that color or if LeVar Burton?
Okay.
Geordi and like canon, if they said, "Hey, what color do you like eyes would you want to go with?"
Yeah.
He's
I
like,
don't know.
"I like blue."
I mean, I would have thought the engineering yellow, but no. I mean, but it's
but then they would
great
have looked like
contrast.
but then they would have looked like Data's eyes if they were
Yeah.
That's
so
true.
there's that.
That is true.
Angelica, your thoughts on the way that Geordi kind of is a little bit more reluctant in his assistance compared to, I mean, basically Picard said hi to Will Riker and he was like, let's go break some rules. He was like, I don't even need to know why. Let's go do it, But Geordi's
Well,
like, all right,
yeah.
hold on. I'm a Commodore now. What did you think about all
Well,
that?
yeah. I mean, here's the thing: we've been seeing so much Starfleet, at least within the Picard series, breaking rules. We've been really seeing a shift in Starfleet, whereas in the Next Generation, or because that's a lot of the series that's more like directly leaned into with the Picard series. Starfleet is very, for the most part, militant and very structured. So we've been seeing a lot of that like renegade energy. So it was actually kind of nice for me to see somebody that's a little bit more strict and a little bit more to the rules, because that was one of the main, I think, like one of the main factors that reined them in TNG, or in a lot of Star Trek series. It would rein them in so that they had to work around these rules. They had to be respectful and they had to be regimented in some way. And so it was nice to see more of that element, at least within Geordi, because it just made more sense to me. And it brought back some of that like original tone of Starfleet. Along with that, it's like, yeah, Riker and Picard are buddies, and like they've been sort of like peas in a pod. And then also just going off of what Katie said, there is a huge theme of parenthood, of having children, and what responsibilities does that thrust upon an individual, and how that can affect an individual, because you no longer can think quote unquote like selfishly. You have to be a little bit more selfless. You have to think about like, oh, okay, do I want to potentially go away on this renegade trip and potentially like have my kid no longer have a dad, or anything along those lines. And parenthood is a massive theme within this season. So I think it tied everything in pretty nicely. And it makes sense for me, if you're years away from this particular crew, you're probably going to grow apart a little bit. It just makes sense. And to have your responsibilities realigned because you've had children, you have a family, you've been like working within this very regimented structure that is Starfleet, then you run back into everybody and you go, oh wait, like I sacrificed for these people, I love it. And he had that inspiration from his daughter and saw that passion again. It makes sense, and it's great character development. I liked it.
Yeah, and I also like that his two daughters seem to be, obviously they care for each other, but they also have legitimate affinity for each other, and just also like, yeah, I'm still working on dad for you. I thought that their family dynamic was good, and yeah, you're right. I mean, so much of the theme, obviously, of the season is about parenthood because of the revelation for Jean-Luc, and I'm always a sucker for that. That'll always get you in and get me in. And I thought that there was a very nice parental moment where, especially judging from the next episode, Geordi caught one whiff of Jack Crusher and he's like, stay away from my daughter. He's like,
Yeah.
don't you be looking at her like that.
Which fair. Like,
Yeah.
fair. Especially since he knows who Picard is. I mean, look, and Riker's been in this company for far too long, and we know how Riker can
he's
be
like,
influencing.
I've known some swashbuckling space pirates in my day, and you, sir, are a ne'er-do-well.
Picard was good post Starfleet Academy, but he was a bit of a ladies' man kind of charisma.
Well, when he had the hair, but
he played Dom Jot,
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about Daystrom Station, which really does not roll off the tongue. But there's obviously instances of like, we catch little glimpses of things. You want to talk about like they'd already done this is also episode 6, so they'd already showed us all the ships, but boy, there's so much stuff they could have crammed in there. I think that would have been, like, okay, well now it's getting crazy,
But like they did. I mean, they had triples
they
in there. They had Kirk in there. Like,
yeah,
there was so much in there. They also had like the Genesis the thing that like creates life on planets. Or whatever.
The like basically the missile. I don't even know. Yeah, I know what you mean, but exactly. So they had it, but they didn't take the time. What I meant is that they didn't take the time to be like, and look at what this is. It's a lot of like, you got to keep your eyes open and watch.
We had to pause a couple of times.
Yeah.
We were like, wait a minute.
And
pause,
hey,
hands,
right
zoom,
back,
flip.
right back to kudos to production designer Dave Blass. Dave Blass. I was just like, wait, is it Dave Bass, like the fish? No, it's Dave Blass. And so getting to see that is and then we finally got our reveal from what we all knew from the trailer, was that we were going to see Moriarty again. And I have to say, I like the way that he was used in this scenario, and that Moriarty hadn't gotten out of the holodeck and become this like criminal mastermind who the whole season was actually, because there was a chance it could have been that as this season went along.
I'm glad it wasn't that, because I was thinking he was going to be sort of like more of a villain than Baddock, which she's already freaking amazing. So like, we don't need another villain. I mean, other than like her Dominion overlord or whatever. But but how short it was kind of shocked me, of how short Moriarty's like trip in this whole episode was. But I wasn't mad at it. I was actually like, well done, like excellently used, very utilitarian.
Yeah, I think that they used the character in a way that made sense. When there's an occasion to use something, it's like how in episode 7, it made sense that 7 reached out to Tuvok, or so she thought, which we'll talk about when we talk about episode 7. It's so yeah, I think more Moriarty would have been like, okay, yes, I know that in the Arthur Conan Doyle books, he's this criminal mastermind, and he's a genius, and he's, basically the yin to Sherlock Holmes yang, but is he really going to be, in charge of the season? I'm glad he wasn't. What did you think about getting to see Moriarty, Angelica?
I thought it was really cool. I, obviously from the teasers and the trailers, I was theorizing, immediately as they dropped, of like, okay, what's Moriarty's presence going to be in this? But as I was watching this latest season, we were like episode 1, 2, 3, and I was like, where's Moriarty? He was like featured in the trailer. And I could not imagine, like I was saying this tons with my live stream chat. I could not imagine that he was going to be the big bad, but he was featured. So I was trying to figure out where he would get incorporated. And I still love Moriarty. Like, I have an affinity towards him. So I'm glad that they had him in the series the way they did, and not like some, I don't know, angry, bitter, like AI,
taking over everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't make it like corny or anything like that. It just kind of made sense that it was so closely tied to like Data. And, I'm sitting there and I'm trying to figure out the logistics of like, I remember when Data's, what was it? Like when his brain fused with the ship, and it made like a fistful of Datas or whatever. I think that was the episode. And so I was like, is he still like tied with holodeck stuff? And like, how did this all, like, I was just trying to like see how deep the rabbit hole went in terms of like Moriarty and his relationship with Data. But it was a cool way that they featured it, and it made sense because it was kind of like solving a little puzzle here, and that's definitely what Moriarty's about.
Yeah, no, I really liked the way that they did that. And you talked about the importance of Data to you, so let's talk about the big find on Daystrom Station. I mean, it is the character who, not only could he have been viewed as the Spock of Next Generation, I mean, in Encounter at Farpoint, Bones basically says like, well, your ears aren't pointy, but you sure sound like him, so it's like they already
They're
put that in our
different.
head. Yeah, no, I know, but I'm saying like as a character type, and
Yeah.
and as something that a lot of people gravitate to in the original
It's
series, of course.
endearing.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like these are beloved characters in the same way, is my point. So the revelation that we're getting some version of Data, which one, good for Brent Spiner, getting
Get him
to
in
return
here.
get him on in here. And look, it's science fiction. Let's stress the fiction. They came up with a credible enough reason to why they could have Brent Spiner that I was like, I got no problems. You're hearing no complaints from me that it's like, yeah, well, I was trying to kind of create a Data that had everybody, the actual getting to see him, Angelica, what were your thoughts?
Oh, it was just lovely. Like it was just really nice to see him again because that's like I said, that was the character that really pulled me into Star Trek, and he's like Data's character. Obviously, he's showing up in a different form in this season, but it's really nice to see those little peaks of Data and lore, and like Brent Spiner's getting more of a test to his acting abilities because now he's got to like multiple personalities switch between all of these characters.
But
like
even
less costume
the
changes.
even the season 1 episode where we first met Lore, I think it's called Data Lore, and he had the twitch back then, and like that was how you could tell the difference. And of course, Lore being Lore, he's like, well, let me go ahead and fix my twitch, and I'm going to go ahead and give the twitch to Data. Now they'll never tell us apart. But he's still kind of like, that was a nice sort of callback from 35 years ago that was how they switched back and forth. And I have to say, it must be fun to play Lore. Not that it's not fun to play Data, but to be like, oh, I'm just going to insult Jean-Luc and how old he looks. Craig in the chat, probably for the best that they don't have bits of LOL.
LOL
might have been a bit of a stretch for Spiner. Yeah, that's a great call.
Yeah.
But Katie, your thoughts on getting? I don't know what we're calling this iteration of Data. I mean, it's
Brent Spider's Data.
Brent Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Yeah. No, it's Brent Spiner. He's a character actor, and I love that it is him as the actor as all the characters that he's already played. So he's almost just Data homage in one human being. And like, it's so great to see a character actor like him be able to play and have fun. It kind of reminds me of Jonathan Majors in Loki at the very end, where he's like going through all, like, I could watch him do a 15-minute monologue as Data, Lore, like anybody else that he's got going on in there. I thought it was wonderful. And I think the thing that was interesting to me was his little fight between Lore and Data. I guess we're breaching into 7 at this point, but like it really reminded me of Rutherford in Lower Decks, if you guys are familiar with that one, when he's like fighting with his older version of self, and like seeing who's going to be the personality that comes on top. And I love that we have a very similar storyline to this, like good versus evil, or different personality versus different personality, like Starfleet versus, I don't know, the liberal guy running around. It's just it's so great to see a character actor get to do the thing that they do best, and it is doing these switches so succinctly that like by just the look in his eyes you can see which character he is, whether he's Data or he's Lore. I think he's just a master at that kind of switch. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, no, and I think that you start to get to see a little hint of it in episode 6, but then when we really get it is when we talk about episode 7. Yeah, I think that it's interesting because what we're getting is sort of this reveal. It seems like he's glitching, and he's like, Jean-Luc Picard. He's like, no, I'm answering your question, dummy. It's Jean-Luc Picard. They're here to get you, which was kind of a cool reveal, because you're like, yeah, well, obviously he's glitching. Let's talk about sort of a key plot point in this episode, which I enjoyed because as a lad, my favorite Star Trek movie was Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. As an adult, I have to point to Wrath of Khan is a better film, but I love them. I was going to say I love them all. That's actually not true, but I love those two. I love 2 and 4 and 6 very much so. 3's okay. 5, I'm just, no, I can't. But anyway, I digress. So the idea that the HMS Bounty, the Klingon bird of prey, and Jack's like, we should probably go ahead and steal that cloaking device, shouldn't we? And oh boy, Geordi's not happy about that. But for somebody who, and they even say this to him while they're having that montage that we talked about, where they're looking over all the ships. It's like, for somebody who badmouths Starfleet so much, he sure has an appreciation for it and an admiration of the ships and the know-how of, like, I believe he and Sydney are the engineers of, no pun intended, of the plot to steal it. Give me your thoughts, Angelica, when you realize, like, oh my God, they're going to steal a cloaking device.
Oh, I mean, that was kind of exciting. I was like, oh, this is flying off the rails real fast.
Yeah.
But I think it made sense the way that Jack at least justified what you just talked about a little bit, which was, he was like, I just like the ships. I get that. You know what I
Sure,
mean?
totally.
Like, when we're kids, we all like that one thing. And Jack's thing was Starfleet ships. And you know what? The designers do a great job. So I get it. They're beautiful. But yeah, when they were going to completely break the rules, obviously I felt a little bad for Geordi, because I was like, oh man, they are putting him in danger. And I think that's been a consistent theme we've seen, is everyone going, Picard, like, I know that you were heralded as such a hero back in the day, but right now you're literally putting everyone on the line. Like, everyone is in danger. You're reckless. What is happening? So that was in line with that. And I felt a little bad for Geordi, because now Geordi, like, I don't know what's going to happen with the rules and everything, but it's fun. I was like, cool, we get to steal a cloaking device. This is great.
Well, is there anyone to impose the rules of Starfleet? I feel like they're all just changelings now.
Honestly,
yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Yeah,
they're gonna.
that's
I think
fair.
they're gonna get a big pass for because, as we've highlighted in past episodes of this show, Starfleet gets compromised very often from what it seems like these last few years.
Very easily.
Very easily. Yeah.
Starfleet's there's some little differences we've been noticing with Starfleet, especially within Picard series, but hopefully this is, this season is the one where they're gonna really up their security or something and be like, all right, we figured this out, like, we can now test for changelings and everything. But yeah, everything's a little chaotic right now.
I want to give a quick a shout out, by the way, that Geordi's other daughter's name is Alondra, and shout out to the actress Mika Burton, who is LeVar Burton's real life daughter. So I thought that was a nice touch. And
she's doing great too. Like, sometimes you get actors, sons or daughters, in playing like an actual son or daughter, and it's like, yeah, you look the look, but you can't act the act.
Oh,
she's
great. Sounds like somebody saw the Sopranos prequel. Yes,
know what you're talking about.
Sometimes, yeah. So I guess there's like two threads from this episode that we'll have to follow up on at another time, because they don't follow through to episode 7. This idea that Worf is going to go head off and find Riker, and then the way that the episode 6 ended, where it's like, oh yeah, well, we're not going to try and hurt you, but we're gonna try and hurt Deanna Troi and your daughter. And so I was like, all right, clearly we're going to pick up with that in episode 7. And then it's like, nah.
Yeah.
We didn't even touch that.
I mean, there's some cliffhangers that are happening in these episodes.
I'm sure we're getting that. Oh, yeah. We'll get that explanation in a future episode. But I was like, I was like halfway through this, like, so we're just not following up on that right now.
Yeah. Throughout the episode, I was like, "Where's Riker? Where's show us?" Like, we literally just saw like Deanna, we saw Riker, and what the frick?
They had fake Tuvok turn into like his face for a second. So but we are gonna have to wait and see. Now, I think it's probably tied into whatever that signal was that they got for a captain trying to contact his ship, which guess it's not a ship anymore, but whatever. I feel like that's going to be one of those. Okay, we need that. They've planted that seed for a future episode. So now let's move on to our actual conversation about episode 7, which pretty much began with the conversation with Tuvok. I have been fairly outspoken on Voyager not being my favorite series, but I did always like the character of Tuvok, and I was happy to see him, even though it turned out not to actually be him. But I believe Tim Russ is that actor's name, so good for him. You know, there's no reason that he should have had an expectation to appear in the Picard series, and so I was happy for him. And I thought that it's all this talk about Janeway. If Kate Mulgrew does not show up in this season, I'm going to be pissed because they've talked about her so many times.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, she's really busy right now. Like, okay.
Really busy shooting Picard season 3, episode 8 or 9.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I can't do episode 7. I'm shooting episode 9.
Yeah, right.
But let's talk a little bit about some of these nods to Voyager. I'll ask you first, Katie. Getting to see Tim Russ as fake Tuvok. But good enough to have known about the card game that they would play.
And and that was a really cool moment too, where I was like, we're just gonna go off of like the one thing of like a memory, like even that like kind of pinged in my head, but such a beautiful way of like doing storytelling and dialogue was like how she just slipped in a couple of other references that like she knew if he didn't get these right, it's not, because when they had the voice modulator thing, like saying like, oh, it's like inconclusive whether or not this is a match, and I was like, I feel like by this point we know that like blood wise, like their DNA is matching up. So I was like, voice recognition should not be the measurement that we're going off of to make sure that this is not a changeling. But like the fact that 7 is quizzing them in this way of like relationship, past history, even Vulcan history, like the way that they're doing this, like just story wise, is so brilliantly done that it slipped. Like when she started talking about like, oh yeah, I was reformed on this one, and like he completely misses the point of that, and she flips. It took me longer with that moment of catching him than it did with like the playing the game situation, because I was like, oh yay, it is actually Tim Russ, and then I was like, wait, but what if it wasn't? And like they're just going along with this, but when it came to that point, just well done, writers. I don't know who the writing team is, if they switched it up or whatever, but like I'm digging this season so hard.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when a lot of shows, the showrunner really runs the writer's room, and by the time that we're seeing things on screen, they've pretty much poured everything into each and every episode so that there's consistency and that everything works. And Terry Matalas was involved in season 2, and I've said it already, this episode wasn't a fan, but you can see that there's so much care. The way that Dave Blass talked about how much the people involved in the show care about the show, and it really comes across all the way down to writers. Craig Robinson. I wonder whether Tuvok would actually give them info, considering how much Vulcans are so disciplined with their mind. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I doubt that they were able to get much. And yeah, I mean, maybe this changeling just estimated that, like, all right, she's probably mentioning this, and odds are I either beat her or she beat me repeatedly. I'm just going to go ahead and roll the dice. But yeah, I wanted to get the same question to you, Angelica, in terms of seeing Tuvok, the talk of Janeway, the talk of her time on Voyager. It does check all those nice memory boxes, all those nostalgia feelings, right?
Oh yeah, totally. I still, every time I think about that, though, I still feel a little pain in my heart, because I do want some justice for Tuvix, but I love Tuvok as well. But it was really cool to see him again. I was like, who are they bringing back this week? It's awesome. And I was surprised by their memory, because if that was me, I'd be like trying to test if someone is a changeling. I'd be like, so what was that one dessert we got. Like, I
Yeah.
think about 20 years ago, that one time, would you say? And they'd be like, what?
Yeah, no, if anyone was ever trying to figure out if I was a changeling by giving me trivia about my own life, I
What's
would
my
have, there's
middle
no way.
name? Like,
Yeah,
I just wouldn't
I'd have
have
to
questions.
check my driver's license for my middle name. I'm like, wait, what?
It reminds me of that meme that like the meme where someone says like, oh gosh, what am I talking about? Not Transformers. Why am I thinking Transformers? No, it's the Arnold Schwarzenegger meme where he's like, what's your mother do for a living? And he's like, she's a grip. And he's like, will you be home for dinner? And she's like, yeah, of course. Like, your mother's dead. It reminds me of that meme where it's like, you ask the question that specifically, like, no, if you're a movie grip, you're working 16-hour days. You're not coming home for dinner.
Yeah.
But that's
a little gotcha.
Like, yeah, it's a total gotcha interview.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm loving how they're just constructing this, and it's also kind of making me question if and when we get back to Riker, how do we know it's Riker? Since Seven isn't the one that's like most in touch with Riker, so like, how is Picard going to question who he is and if it is actually Riker? They're like, this whole new changeling thing seems to bring up a lot more questions of like, how do we determine whether or not you're a goo man or not?
I don't think there will be a lot of questions with Riker, because I just feel like Jean-Luc's gonna look into his eyes and go, that's not Riker. Sure. You know what I mean? Because it's a little bit tougher, I think, with someone like Tuvok or like a Vulcan to be like, oh, like, it's very, non-expressive face, more of the monotone way of speaking, very logical. Like, that's, some easier steps to follow as a changeling, doing an impersonation of someone. But like, Riker's just, he's got his own way he carries himself. He's gonna sit in his chair a certain way, and Jean-Luc's gonna notice.
If he doesn't do the like horse mount onto a chair, that's where like, you're not Riker.
The Riker maneuver. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's also, Tuvok wasn't there. Like, Riker, they'll be in front of him. They'll be, on the bridge with him or whatever. So I think it'll be easier to judge in that way. There's a lot of discussion in this episode about morality, which I think is a lot to think about. I mean, they referenced it in episode 6, this idea that, during the Dominion War, they had the virus, and then they're like, yeah, but we have a cure. And then we learn, like, yeah, but they didn't want to give us the cure. Somebody had to steal it. And I'm like, okay. So, and then, Vadic's story about being experimented on, you're like, yeah, I wouldn't be happy either. I mean, it's I would carry that big of a grudge, and I would not be forgiving.
This brings up a bit of a divide between Vadic and the Dominion, what seems to be, because the Dominion is like your kind. And we realize later in the episode that Vadic was a part of like a couple of changelings that were captured and very much experimented and tortured. Also, how fucked up is it that she took the image of the person torturing her? Like, that is some interesting storytelling right there.
That's psychology right there. That's like cycle of abuse type, like, stuff.
Yeah, no, and like, they address it in a way that it's so chilling. It's like, yeah, she did that so that she never forgot. Yeah, she's reminded of what happened and reminded of her hate. And you want to talk about psycho? Who just sits around and whistles "Pop Goes the Weasel"? I'm
on it.
Wait, was
while
that
they're doing while they're engaging in eugenics?
Buns. Or Three Blind Mice.
Oh, it was Hot Cross.
Three Blind Mice. Yeah.
Three Blind Mice. Yeah. I forgot.
For a second, I was watching it. I was like, "Is this Hot Cross Buns?"
I couldn't tell at first.
I was like, do. Yeah.
Three Blind Mice is apparently the official soundtrack to eugenics, and we just didn't know it. So who knew that it had it had a soundtrack? Because and I think that getting that backstory, and even Jean-Luc and Beverly are like, yeah, we can't really fault you for that. We're still gonna talk about killing you though, which I was like, wow, that
I think that makes sense.
Oh, it does, but I was just
does, but
surprised. And I mean
Yeah.
the way that Beverly even says, like, I mean, their conversation of like, this is how far along we are in this. This is,
Yeah.
to save our child. Go ahead, Angelica, you first. Talk a little bit about that conversation and what they were prepared to do.
Well, I remember at first being sort of shocked by it because I'm used to them being very compassionate characters,
Sure.
but then I think they realize like we have to make haste here. This is problematic, and like this, it feels kind of bad starting this conversation, but it was like this person's not going to change. They're not going to have some like redemption arc. Like this person is like at their core, they're like holding on to this, and they're just like, all right, like metaphorically Cox phaser, it's just like, what else are we gonna do here? Like Beverly said, it's like inviting Vadic onto the ship is inviting death at this point, because they're like, yeah, this person's not gonna be reasonable. This is clearly someone handling trauma. Like this is something that would take years upon years to like work through, and we can't just show up and be like, no, we're the good guys. It's just.
But speaking on theme, I mean, isn't that the same journey that Picard had to go on when recovering from being part of the Borg? And like, who is it that we trust, especially those who are damaged or abused? And I feel like there is a running theme of that, especially with the connection of TNG and Picard. Is like, how much abuse can you suffer before you're irredeemable? And that was like a really interesting thing to come to a point where we have Picard and Beverly Crusher talking about killing a person when usually they would be all for redemption. But I do think that we've got a little bit of a hint where Dominion doesn't see Vadic as part of the Horde. So there is some kind of divide there, even with their own people. That might be an interesting thing that we see later on, but who knows?
I don't think Dominion's part of like changelings necessarily.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah, I don't think so. It's because they're saying you're kind,
right. Well, I mean, I think that what we can infer is that up until that point, she references the Great Link and all that. She's a changeling, but her and her kind, the others, they've been altered, so they're not the same anymore. So now they're looked at differently. Like they probably couldn't rejoin the link, if I'm going to assume, because that basically is just one big vat of ooze, basically. Yeah, a puddle of mud, if you will.
I got the impression that like Dominion was something different, and maybe something that's more linked up with Jack or something. Like what's going on with Jack? There seems to be a tie there.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about Jack in this episode. I mean, Vadic references, what he really is. She says something very pointed to Beverly, and it's like, this may not be who you think it is, or maybe Vadic kind of talks about being able to kind of pass things on, the ability, the changeling ability. So did she come into contact with Jack at some point, and that's what has changed him? It's interesting that we're seeing some kind of telepathy now, and using it for exactly what a swashbuckling space pirate would, reading the minds of ladies who may or may not be interested in you, and like, I guess I'm gonna grab her hand, because I guess that's what she's thinking. What do we think about what's going on with Jack? I'll ask you first, Katie.
It's interesting, intriguing, and scary because it can go so many different ways. Like, we don't know Jack all that much, and we don't know where he's been or what he's been through, truly. So I'm not sure. It also, Vadic made it seem like he's not even Beverly's son. To a certain effect. But even says like, are you willing to lose another one? In reference to
Wesley.
So Wesley.
Yeah, well, and then that thinking is that Jack Crusher was born Beverly Crusher's son. Is this possibly not Jack Crusher? Is this the way that she kind of took over her captor, her experimenter? Is he merged with someone of her kind? So a lot of questions there that I'm not quite sure what to think. What about you, Angelica?
It's definitely something like vaguely, not like, I don't want to use the word like mystical, but it definitely feels as if there's something more like spiritual or mystical obviously involved with this. I don't know if it's tied to like Dominion at all, but obviously a lot of the Deep Space Nine references and themes make me think, well, maybe there's some Bajoran, I don't know, like some sort of Bajoran involvement here. So I was thinking of like Pa Wraith stuff or like something along those lines. So I don't know. I don't know if they're going to start tying that in, but it definitely seems as if maybe there's something like in Jack, like maybe something happened and Beverly had to make a sacrifice in order to save Jack, or and then like this is now embedded in him. So I don't know. Yeah.
Craig Robinson with this point. I thought it was more that her goo was conveniently more resilient. In life, we all try to strive to have more resilient goo as part of our essence and who we are. And that's what I try to pass on to my kids. Just make sure that the goo inside of you is hardened. Yeah. And I think it asks some big questions. I think that, the way that everything with the force fields was working and the way that they had everything, you're like, well, this isn't like the first half hour of the episode. This is all going to go to shit, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
There was no way that this is like,
and who could get that transporter working? Was Chief O'Brien. Chief O'Brien should have been there from the beginning.
By the way, every time you say it, I wish that. Where's Cole Meany now? He could have. If they called him, he would have been there.
He was just on It's Always Sunny. So
was
yeah,
he really?
Yeah, it was a character in like one of the later seasons. So he's around. I just don't know
he's
why.
probably ready to work. But apart from that,
and is Keiko going to be with him? I'm sorry.
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Or is she a child? But it's the one thing I did want to just like mention was and sorry, this is going back a little bit, but when Vadic first sees Jack Crusher and she says, "Oh, my dear boy," which is a very endearing and motherly tone to take with someone that apparently she hasn't met and is like on the hunt for to get back. And also she was saying like, I can't tell you about this. I'd rather show you. It means more if I show you. And I was like, what does she know? That obviously all of us don't, or what do they both know that we don't at the moment? And I think it has to do something with that telepathy because there's something going on there.
Yeah. And I know, and it's I feel like we're gonna start to get more and more answers. There's only 3 more episodes left, and I was talking to Katie before we started, by the way. And we still have but you're getting married the day after the season finale, or 2 days after. So it's you may not even get to watch it for a little while.
You know who I think you should actually have on, because he will have way less to do than I do, is my fiance Mark, who is the biggest Star Trek nerd you've ever met.
Well, I've met some very big Star Trek nerds, but I'm not going to question that. But as someone who was once a fiance, there's nothing for us to do that day, like up until we got to show up,
I'm gonna hook you up with this information.
All right, that'll be perfect. In any case, so yeah, I think that we saw a lot of things in place, and who has to go and just inject chaos into the mix? Fucking Lore. Just imagine if it hadn't been for Lore.
Wait, does Lore love
everything
chaos?
Would have been fine.
Is it about chaos? Does he love chaos? I couldn't tell.
It's chaos with a dash of revenge, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry that they didn't like you just because you were the evil version of your beloved brother,
Yeah.
But that really was the fly in the ointment, was Lore, who could just stone-faced look at Geordi's heartfelt memories, which were very heartfelt and really tugged at the heartstrings. And Lore's just like, nah, next.
Well, and you don't really get to see that in Generations. You don't get to see how he deals with this, and like to see that monologue come out of him and like choke him up so hard. Kudos to LeVar. Really well done scene.
Yeah, Craig points something out, and Craig, because it's so late, I'm gonna forgive you. It's after midnight there. I'm gonna forgive you for referring to Jean-Luc as JL. Data mentioned that Jean-Luc's syndrome was probably misdiagnosed, but strange that he hasn't shown any superpowers like Jack. Yeah, I mean, I think that the misdiagnosed condition that Picard had sounds like season 3 writers didn't love what season 2 writers did, or season 1 writers did, but we'll see. That happens a lot. Yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see. There was a lot of information that we got from here, but what do we think about the sort of this mental bond between Jack and Sydney LaForge? Do you have any thoughts on that, Angelica?
Well, I think that I mean he started doing it because obviously he's just got I guess a lot of care and love for her. I definitely think it's got to be one way coming from Jack. Like I don't think they're both shared to the same space radiation and it makes them like I don't think it's some sort of two-way situation, but rather maybe like we've seen multiple forms of telepathy within the Star Trek universe. So I guess we'll just have to I'll chalk it up at least for now to the bond that you have via crush on somebody. You're like, ooh, I want to be closer to them. Let me get in their mind, and he has these powers. So he's able to be like, what is she thinking? And he's able to actually make that happen and she can sense it, you definitely like with the Vulcan mind meld, you definitely feel the presence of the Vulcan that's melding with you. So who's to say that like someone can't sense that telepathy? So I think that it's one way coming from Jack, and he's just got a really big crush on LaForge.
Well, it's his last name for a reason.
The crush.
A corny joke. That's why I hit the bell, because it's a corny joke.
Yeah, there you go.
So, of course, everything goes exactly the way they don't want it to. Vadic takes over the bridge. And I think that was inevitable once they were on board.
Yeah.
But and I guess when we get to episode 8, I can't believe that we're so close to being done. We'll see how that goes. Now, obviously, not everyone is held hostage. By the way, let's give it up for Captain Shaw, who really takes a beating in this series.
This poor freaking guy. I thought he was dead for sure, and I'm so glad he's alive.
He's like to pull a character from the Muppets, Katie. He's like the Bean Bunny of Star Trek Picard. It's just the worst things are always happening to him, and they're like, yeah. but it's Captain Shaw. Who's still one of my favorite characters, by the way. He's
fantastic, and I'm glad that he's still alive. Because I feel like the maiden voyage of his Titan is just getting him through the ringer.
Yeah, it's like the Enterprise B, that barely made it out of space dock, I guess.
Yeah, I had a feeling from episode 1 though. I saw this guy and I went, "Oh, he's so hateable. Oh, he's gonna have like a really good character arc, isn't he?"
I still, that character arc can only end with noble sacrifice, where he gives his life to save everyone. And
I hope he doesn't have to like die to do it though.
No, I hope he doesn't, but I feel it coming.
He is on a martyr path. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. But that's all right. Well, let's finish up by saying what do we think might happen next? I mean, Worf is still out there. We're not sure where Riker is. We've got some friends running. So we've got Sydney and Jack meet up with Beverly and Jean-Luc, and Geordi, multiple LaForges, and Data. What are the odds that Data snaps back to Lore at exactly the wrong moment throughout the rest of the season?
I'd say 110%, right?
Yeah, I think that's inevitable. If Vegas is going to take odds on that, I'm going to basically put my entire house on it. I will literally bet the house. What do you think, Angelica? What do you think we might get next week with all these threads that are still out there from the last couple episodes?
Well, I'm hoping that we get some updates on Riker and
Agreed.
Deanna. I'm assuming that's the actual Deanna, not just a changeling version. Like they're not too lazy to go get her. But
yeah, I wondered that too, if it was
Yeah, I think
actual
we all
Deanna.
are.
Yeah.
yeah, like everyone's once you know there's an imposter among you, it's like, okay, sorry, changelings, you kind of showed your hand here. Like I'm gonna question everyone and everything at this point. But yeah, we'll get some updates on Riker. I definitely think there's a new life form or some sort of like new version of a life form, because that like Dominion, like that whole situation, it seems a little too mystical for me right now. Like it's starting to get really, like I said, maybe something with like Bajoran, because I know Bajoran has like a lot of mysticism involved. So I definitely think there's like some sort of power, right? There's some situation along those lines. And we're starting to see the merging of different life forms too, like Jack. I don't know if Jack is wholly something else, or if he's a merge, like I said, like an amalgam of two different life forms, or what happened there. I think anything's possible when Beverly Crusher disappears and has this, massive background in like the medical field. So that's what I think is going to happen. We're going to get updates on Riker, and we're going to learn more about Jack, and maybe like Jack is involved somehow, like tied somehow to this Dominion situation.
Yeah, no, I think all of that, we're gonna get a better sense for what the plan is for Frontier Day, and I think that I think that Starfleet, although compromised, I feel like it's going to endure, because we know it exists 1,000 years into the future, or at this point, it's like 800 years in the future. But that's all right. What are your thoughts, Katie, for what might come next? What you'd like to see next?
I full-heartedly agree. I think we're going back to Riker. I think we are unfortunately probably going to be following some Raffi stuff as well. I feel like this next episode will be a Raffi Worf and Riker and Trae episode, because we've had so much of Picard and all of that. But we will see. I feel like we might not get back to Jack's storyline or things with Jack, because we've been leaving off on these huge like cliffhanger of like, what the hell was that moment. So I feel like him being able to like telepathically control another human being will come into play, but not until like 2 or 3 episodes later.
Right. I think you're right. I think at the end of episode 8, we might be just all caught up to where we are now. We're going to get everybody back together. But I will make sure to let everybody know when our show is back. I believe my pal Nikki Bailey will be joining me, and we'll see who else might for next week's show. So follow me at Christian DMZ to know. And earlier we were talking about Strange New Worlds now available on Blu-ray. We've actually had the announcement that season 2 will premiere on June 15th of Strange New Worlds, and very excited for that, because that was the show that basically rekindled my romance with Star Trek after I thought that maybe we were going to need a break after Picard season 2. I was like, maybe I'm going to need some time to myself. Oh, but I want to see Strange New Worlds. And they brought me right back. So
I love Pike.
I know. And
good.
I kind of hope he messes up the timeline and he lives forever. But even if he doesn't, he's got like 10 more years before the accident. So
I don't
10
want him
seasons.
We can't. I don't want him to change the timeline.
No,
I don't want him to. Obviously, I think that everything has to happen for a reason, and so I kind of like this element in it. Just saying.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, Angelica, thank you for coming back on, and hope that we speak again before the end of the season. If people want to find you, where can they do that?
You can find me over on Twitch. I live stream like 4 days a week. It's Trae, Ayytrae. Otherwise, you can also find me across social media platforms. I'm always posting stuff. I make sketches and videos and Star Trek content too, and cosplays. It's usually Trae, but Instagram specifically is Angelica Trae, because I'm a mess.
And Katie, other than possibly hand designing place settings for people who are going to be sitting at the dinner on the big wedding night. What else are you up to, and where can people find you?
You can find me as always at ElSassyPants, ElSasssyPants, sometimes with a Z if you're on TikTok. I also do sketches and things all around Los Angeles, and we'll probably be doing more things at the Pack in the next coming months, but post-April, because April is wedding month, and I'm just doing that right now.
Yeah, I know.
Understandable.
So we'll try and squeeze you in one more time, but I guess people will have to tweet at you to find out what you think about the finale, but not until like the Monday after your wedding.
Maybe. So. Yeah, we'll see what the schedule looks like and how many.
Or maybe like
members.
the Saturday. Like you need a full week. But in any case, thank you to everybody who was in the chat. We appreciate it, including regular participant on the show, David Weiss, letting me know the Mets Marlins score. So thanks for that. But that is, we jam-packed this episode. We talked about 2 episodes. And as I said, we'll be back next week with my pal, Nikki Bailey. But until then, live long and prosper.